So we'll get that started. Okay, so for the agenda, we got 30 minutes of a high-level AiM overview in which we'll go over property, space, assets, project management, and time management. Then we've got about 45 minutes of a medium-level overview in which I'll go over work orders, customer service, employees, and shops. After that, I'll go over the data collection template. Shouldn't take more than 30 minutes to go over that. And then there's an extra 15 minutes built in for any additional questions you guys may have. This is session 1 of 3. I'll be holding session 1 today, Wednesday, and Friday. And then 2 weeks from now, I'll be holding session 2, which will be on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as well. And then lastly, 5 weeks from now, we've got session 3, which will also be on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you can't make one of those, like I said, I'll have it recorded as well. You can always refer back to it. Everybody should have my contact information. You can reach out to me by phone or via email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Any questions about the agenda at the moment? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, so the whole purpose of this is not to train you on AiM O&M. The purpose of this is to provide you with enough information and enough understanding that when you go to fill out these data import templates, that you can fill them out with ease and comfortability with the understanding of what it is you're actually doing. We'll have formal training scheduled for you guys in February, March timeframe of 2019. Okay, let me back and use all. Okay, so we'll get started. I'll show you guys AiM. When you log into AiM, you're going to have a work desk. You might be wondering, a lot of you, what is AiM? AiM is a platform with a bunch of modules that you can see on the left-hand side here, and these modules make up particular functionality. So we utilize asset management, property and space, and O&M. O&M is made up of several different modules that consist of work management, customer service, human resources, inventory, and a few others. But I'll go through some of them pretty quickly here just to give you, again, a high-level overview of what AiM is. And some of the modules, just to give you an understanding of the platform itself. So the first thing is assets. In assets, we have a variety of different types of physical assets that right now we've got capital assets in the system, and what we're going to do throughout this exercise, I believe during session 2, we'll be collecting assets that are PM'd. Capital assets can range from central plant boilers to chillers to elevators, roofing, a variety of things. There's 5 big ones that we have in there, if I can never remember what they are. But for example, we've got some air handler units and central plant boilers, chillers, roof, elevator, and generators. If I go back to the main page, after assets, we have property and space. So property, basically we have locations and we have properties, which in AiM are the same thing as buildings. So if I click on property, I'm actually clicking on a building itself. So this building's in Cortland. It's one of the main buildings at 170 North Street. Real high level, real easy to get to, good understanding. Basically, we'll tie an asset to a property and hopefully a location. And what a location is, if I scroll down, is a specific room within that building or an area within that building. So an area of vending, or room 100 is childcare, 108 is a restroom, 100B is a restroom, and so on and so forth. Now, don't think you have to remember all this that we're going over right now. We'll review it all again as needed. From property, we use space management, and space management is the assignment of an organization or a grant to a specific location. That way you have organizational occupancy, you know who's in what room and for what period of time. Or grant occupancy, you can tie a grant to a particular location and know, okay, for this particular research grant, we've got it in this room, this room, and this room, and we can come back to it at a later time. So here I can pick like library. So the library is part of institutional research, and its department number and everything is here. The start date, the end date for the organizational occupancy. Gives us a lot of information, allows us to pull reports for whether it be a budget report and we need to know where the grants are coming from, or if we'd like to know organizational occupancy, who's in that particular room at that time, and we want to move Professor X from room 120 to room 130 to teach physics, and we can do all that through AiM. From there, we have project management. Now, in project management, we have a project group and a project. A project group is self-explanatory. It's a group of projects. And a project in AiM is a group of work orders. So if I was holding an event may be my group, my project group, and then I might have projects for grounds, projects for carpentry, a project for maintenance, and then each one of those projects has a series of work orders assigned to them. These work orders, we'll go into more detail here shortly, but can contain information that allows the shop to do specific work or planned work in preparation for budgeting for that event or various other attributes. Okay. Next, we have Timecard Management. So we have time and attendance. Basically in AiM right now, majority of you guys are going to be using Timecard Management just to apply time to work orders and account for the time, which then accounts for cost of labor for that particular work order. So in here we have a variety of time cards that we've created. It shows the time type, labor, the work order it was associated to, any action taken, number of hours, and then how much that actually cost on the work order. So once we get all your data and we get everything imported in, we'll be able to break things down by cost and associate cost per work order. Okay. Moving pretty quickly through the schedule here. Any questions so far on property, space, assets, project management, or time card management? No? Okay, I'll go into the more detailed ones now. These are the ones that are going to... Sorry, did somebody have a question? Okay, so these are the ones that are more detailed that are going to be part of our data research, our data collection that we're about to start to kick off this week, which is shops and employees. So to kick this off, I'm going to explain what a work order is in AiM and what it's made up of. So a work order is just like any other work order. You put in what it is you're trying to do. So in this case, they want to rekey the office door in room 518. You can have tie it to an organization. There can be a requester who put this work order in, a contact, which can be different than a requester. It could be someone's secretary, an admin, could be a different shop person, a contact phone, and a contact email. The region that you're, this particular one's from Potsdam, the facilities, main campus, and then the property. Like I explained earlier, property gets assigned to a work order, so we know it's in Raymond Hall. The type, it's keys and security, because we're rekeying the office door for room 518, and the category is keys and security. So we've got some types. Well, in here we have this thing called a phase. A work order has at least one phase, and a phase is where the work is actually done. So if I click on the phase, here I can see a little bit more information. I've got an estimated start date, an estimated end date, some work codes, and whether or not it's been assigned to a shop person. So this is where we get into shop persons and employees. So I would assign a shop person to a phase and not to a work order. Some may ask, why would we assign a shop person to a phase and not a work order? Well, a work order, like I mentioned before, can be made up of many different phases. So in this case, you want to rekey room 518, but when the locksmith gets there, it might be a little bit more challenging than just rekeying it. He may need to replace the deadbolt, and in the process of replacing the deadbolt, he scratches something or breaks the door jamb and needs to have carpentry come in and fix it. So we can add on to the work order, we can add different phases, or we have a work order that sells the ground screw to go out and work on the front yard of the president's house. Well, they might put a phase for mowing and a phase for weed eating and another phase for edging. It's all up to you guys as to how you break out that work order, but the work order itself is separated into at least one phase, or if not multiples. The great thing about phases is you can assign a phase to a different person, or you can assign the phases to the same person. So here we've got it assigned to Terrence Kuhn, and it was assigned by Mitch S.J. So any question on work orders and phases so far? And again, feel free to interrupt at any time. If I'm going too fast or going too slow, let me know.
Dan, if you don't mind, if you could go over work orders and phases again. I pretty much have it, but I just want to make sure I got my notes correct.
Yeah. So a work order gets put in for a particular task or a group of tasks. And when the work order gets put in, you have an organization, a requester, a contact phone, and email. Those are all optional fields, but it provides you with additional information, whether it be for billing purposes, if you do internal billing. But the requester is nice because it's good to know who requested the work order, and then a point of contact is also nice because it may be somebody different than the requester. The region, facility, and property tells us where the work order is put in, where the work needs to be done. And then the type and category tells us what type of work it is. From there, we have a phase. Like I mentioned before, we have at least one phase tied to a work order, or we can have multiple phases tied to a work order. So in this case, we have one phase. Tells us the shop, if there's a primary person, a priority for the work order, an estimated start and estimated end date for the work order, and then a work group and work code, so we're rekeying the room. And then lastly, we've got a shop person, which in this case is Terrence Kuhn, and whether or not or who assigned it and the assigned date. Okay.
Hi, Dan. This is June from FIT. I have a question about who actually gets to generate these work orders. Is it the entire campus population, or is it certain assigned, individuals? For instance, at our campus, when we're looking at key requests, it has to be approved first by space management for the allocation of the space, and then public safety, ensuring that they're vetted. So when you see a work order like this, is that vetting process part of this work order process as well?
That's before the work order process. You have a customer request that comes in, and it's a customer request that puts in the work order, and there's an approval process in the workflow for that particular item. But a lot of that, after we do this initial implementation, we're implementing the keys, motor pool and EH&S. That workflow is going to transition over to that portion of the application. So it'll have your multiple approvals that are required, your sign-offs, and any additional steps that you need that are required. So in this case, I'm just showing you the work order itself, and we kind of jumped ahead of the steps required to get to the work order. Does that make sense to you, June?
Yes, that makes sense. I think, in terms of full deployment, I think we'd have to understand that entire process on our end. So I think that's really an overall question, really when would the key control module be deployed, and how do we wrap that into approvals? And it sounds like we would still have to have a process separate from this before we even dive into getting this type of work order generated.
Yes, there will be some of it that's outside of AiM, but a majority of it will still be handled within AiM itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have some questions on work orders? Okay, I'll continue, which I should have started with customer service. So, good segue from June here is customer service gets a request. The request can be via an email, a phone call, someone stopping in and at the customer service desk, or a front-end application. But in this case, we'll just pull up one here. So here's the request for electrical repairs. We've got an organization, a requester, a contact. This is before it's been turned into a work order. So this request has to go through a process. So there's a review process for the work order. Once reviewed, depending on who you are, which at the moment they don't have the proper status, you can go through and approve. So there's an approval then of the work order. I'm going to save it back as new. And then once it's approved, then you can submit the work order for, or submit the request as a work order, and a work order will be generated. When a work order gets generated, below new here, we should see the work order number and the work order status. So that's customer service in at a high level there. They get it, they get the call, they fill in the information here, and then they send it through. If it's keys, there's an extended approval process where it's got to be approved by several different managers that or supervisors that you have to assign within the system to get that before it becomes a work order. Okay. So moving forward, we have employees and shops. So before I dive into employees and shops, some clarification when I talk about shops is shops are also known throughout many of the campuses as crews. So in AiM we refer to them as shops. A shop is a group of people that accomplish a common task, like HVAC, painting, carpentry, electrical, and so forth. As we go through the AiM here, and as many of you have filled out the shops list for me already, you can assign more than one person to a shop, as well as you can assign a person to more than one shop. So say you have a jack of all trades and he moves around from place to place, or she, they can be assigned to electrical, HVAC, and carpentry. For many of the smaller campuses, I know in that list I sent out, I had 7 or 8 required shops, yet you may have 7 or 8 people that just do everything. We just assign all those people to all those shops, and based on their particular work that they're doing, we would then pick that particular shop for tracking and reporting purposes. What this does is it gives you the ability to report on the type of work that's being done, the amount of spending put towards that type of work, and see where you spend more of your time? Is it more on electrical and plumbing, or do you spend a lot of time on carpentry and locksmithing? So we'll start with an employee profile. So an employee in AiM, there's not a whole lot of information about the employee. We don't bring over their entire HR file. It's all public information. So in here, you'll have a shop person as their employee type. That will tell me that they are allowed to be associated to a shop. They can be assigned work orders. So when we talk about a shop person within AiM, they're not necessarily a manual labor person. It may be an architect. It may be an admin that gets assigned work orders to put in timesheets. It may be a director who approves timesheets as a shop person. So that would be our employee type. Mr. Woods here. Payroll data, we don't have anything at the moment, but we have their job title and status. Now, the only way we get this information is we have this information from the state campuses. We don't have this information from the community colleges because you guys are on separate systems. So I'll be asking you for that information in the import template, which we'll review here shortly. Confidential data, there's nothing in here that, even though it's highlighted, there's no confidential data. We don't do social security numbers or anything that's not public information. Now, once a person is labeled as a shop person, I can assign them to a shop. So in here, I've got a variety of shops. If I go to carpentry, I can go down here and I can see, here's all my people assigned to carpentry. Their job title, their name, their employee ID number, and if I want, I can put their start date just to keep track of when they started. Now with the shop, you have a status. So in this case, it's active. You can have an inactive shop, and you can have third status is suspended. Suspended shop is one that maybe you use it sometimes and you don't use it other times. A lot of times this is used for contract work. You may kick up a shop for a contractor of a specific type that's doing a large job for you, and then you might suspend it for a while and then turn it back on at a later date. You have motor pool, which in this case, for all the shops that we're doing, they're not, they'll all be no to motor pool. And basically that means that shop is assigned to the motor pool application or module within AiM, which is more of a vehicle leasing rental type of application versus what you might think of motor pool as being vehicle repair or vehicle maintenance. Here we assign a shop supervisor. Now, unfortunately, we can only assign one supervisor, even though a shop might have multiple supervisors. This is only for purposes of having a supervisor on a report. So you'd pick whichever supervisor you want to assign to that particular shop, and we put that one on the report. In way of pulling and looking at dashboard reports on your work desk, we can assign shop supervisor rights to multiple people for that particular shop, so nobody loses any functionality. It's just a name that's in this box. Here we have Sunday through Saturday. It's regular work days. So what days is this shop in regular business? Is the shop in business on Sundays regularly? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Do you work Saturdays on a regular basis? We just put yes or no. And then, like I said, lastly, we've got our shop persons. So I can go in here and I can get Ronald Woods and I can add him. Say we added him today, and we're done. Now we've got Ronald Woods is in carpentry as of today. I don't know if he is, but for this demo, he is now. Inside shops, we have time card approvers. We'll assign a role, so you'll have a supervisor role. They'll be allowed to assign time cards and be able to go forward from there. So, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter whose name is on the supervisor, as long as they're in the supervisor role, they can approve the time cards. Okay, as I was explaining before, so right now we assigned Ronald Woods to the carpentry shop. If I go back to a different shop, say grounds, I can go ahead and I can assign Ronald Woods to grounds as well. So now I got Ronald Woods. Now, what Ronald will see if he gets assigned work is he can see work from grounds and he can see work from carpentry. He cannot see work from electrical or any other shop that he's not a part of. Okay. Any questions on employees or shops? Okay. So some more information around the employee and how the shop person gets assigned to the work order. So we're going to go back to work orders. We have an employee assigned to a phase. I've got this nifty little button here, shop assignments, and I can see who's all in that shop and what work's been assigned to them. If something's been assigned to them that particular day, which I can go in and I can assign the work. And now it's assigned to Terrence Kuhn, and I can see his workload. So now I know Terrence has got this particular work order, this particular phase to do on Monday the 1st. So the week prior to, say Friday afternoon, as a supervisor, I can go through and I can start assigning work for the next week. So when they come in and they get on their iPads or they print their work orders out, their work tickets, they're able to get what's assigned to them already, and the supervisor can easily see what's been placed out there. Any questions on assigning work? It's a pretty simple task. So now Terrence is still assigned the work. He works 8 hours a day, so we have a trade capacity. It won't allow us to assign more than 8 hours of work a day to Terrence. It'll try to push that work over to the next day. So if I schedule a bunch of PMs, the PMs are going to fill up, and then maybe there's 120 some hours worth of PMs to do. There's only so much time in a week. So it'll tell me, hey, I've got this much time for these people as I go and I assign work in the shop assignment. As long as I put in an estimated number of hours, it'll let me know how much of that work is taking up his time. Okay. Moving right along. So now we're going to start to see where all of this in AiM corresponds with what we do on our spreadsheet. So many of you have sent back this first spreadsheet, which is the shop assignments spreadsheet. I asked you guys to have this to me before your session. So if you did, great. If not, it's not a big deal yet. But I do need that back as soon as possible. And basically we've got items in bold, which are required shops. And then here in column E, which I apologize, I made a mistake in the instructions and someone pointed that out to me. I said column D in the instructions. In column E, you put down which shops you like to use and name them whatever you'd like to name them. If you have a particular name for a shop that's different from what we called the shop, and you don't want to implement too much change on your employees, then that's where you can go ahead and rename it. As long as it's no more than 25 characters. So here we count the characters as you go down the list. It tells you how many characters that particular shop name is. Any questions on this shop template?
Hi, this is June from FIT again. I do have a question. So all of the required shops that you have on the list is taken care of for FIT by an external vendor, our property management group, ABM. That's what I've listed on my spreadsheet back to you. Is that enough information, or should it be more specific in the way that you've listed it here?
It should be more specific, and I actually was getting ready to send you an email before the meeting, but didn't get to it. Okay. In your case, since it's done by a vendor and you bid them out, I'm assuming every year or every other year?
Correct.
You don't want to have a shop named the particular vendor. So you name the shop, custodial, events, grounds, etc., and in the description we can put the vendor's name in there. That will allow us to differentiate between the different shops still, and you still know who the vendor is. Okay.
All right, great. So I will work with our facilities team to really figure out what the appropriate name is for each of these shops.
Yeah, no problem. And the big reason is we've got this APPA, FPI reporting that we have to do. Or it's not that we have to do, it's reporting that we're going to start doing now that we have AiM, that gives us the ability to share information about our campuses and compare ourselves to other campuses. And they have it under specific categories. So the required shops give us the required categories to be part of that group. Okay, so moving right along. Here's the shops and employees template. I've got Onondaga. I hope I pronounced that correct. I've taken the shops that they sent me, put them in the spreadsheet already. I need a description. I've already filled out some information. There will be a supervisor, which we'll get to later, a contact, and a contact phone number. And then remember all those no's and yeses from a little bit ago? There's whether or not you're open on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, just as a reference, as I go through these spreadsheets, again, one, interrupt me if you need to, and two, I've got a document that corresponds with these spreadsheets that gives you step-by-step how to fill it out. So if by chance you forget something or wonder what should be in what column or how to fill out a column, there's multiple avenues you can take. You can look at the instructions or give me a call or shoot me an email. So the first one is shops. The second one is shifts. I've pre-populated the shifts with some default information. You got regular 8 hours, part-time 4 hours, regular 10 hours, and regular 12 hours. If your shifts vary from that, if you have odd shifts or you want to break it down even further, I'll show you an example of what Upstate does. You can. These are just some default ones that if you want to stick to the default, makes things pretty easy. Next we have employee. With employee, you have a multi-tenant ID, which is just your region code with the first 4 digits of your region code. Which for Onondaga is 2967. Now this is where the templates are going to be a little bit different. For community colleges, as I mentioned before, I don't have any employee information from you guys, so I need you to provide me with that information. I need an employee ID that is not a social security number and is unique to that employee. Could be the employee's state ID, it could be a campus ID, anything but the social security number. Employee's first name, middle initial, last name. Next is a Windows user ID. Many of you will have to reach out to IT for this one, but to create accounts for you guys to log into, I'll use the Windows user ID you provide me so that the single sign-on service works correctly and everything jives well. So we don't need their passwords, we just need their user IDs. Okay, the next 2 columns. Everything's going to be Y under the active column, because yes, that employee is active. And then under employee type, if they are a shop person, you're going to change employee type to S. If they're just a regular employee and not a shop person, and you'd like them to be in the system because maybe they're going to be a requester, you leave them as an E for employee. The next column is supervisor. You put a Y in this column if they are a supervisor, and you leave the column blank if they're not a supervisor. And then next we have shop. I have a drop down there for whatever shops that you had put in the spreadsheet or given me in the one spreadsheet or populated here. You can easily go through and select the shop they belong to and then the shift that they work. Got some nifty little drop downs there. After that, primary email, if they utilize email there, not everybody will have one, so it's not a required field. An office phone, a cell phone, and this is more informational purposes. It can be printed off on a work order or easily looked up in AiM if you're looking for the cell phone of the grounds crewman or the cell phone number of your locksmith because he's around the building somewhere, not in his office. You can put that information in AiM and make it easier for you to look it up. Again, not required fields, but preferred. Local title is a local job title. What you, the campus, calls the person. They could be grounds crew worker, electrician number 2, whatever you call that particular person, and then budget title. Budget title is the title used under the, I believe, the chart of accounts for budgeting. So a lot of these will be the same for many of the people. And I'll show some examples here in just a couple minutes. And then lastly, the last column is the chart of account for department. The chart of account for department is the department in which the shop person is associated with. And we need the chart of account for them so we can get their budget information correct as we're going through and doing reports. Okay. Any questions on this template so far? I know this is a blank template. Okay. So now I'm going to show you one that's filled in. So here I've got an example from Upstate. We've got the shop, a description, the supervisor, which what we do is we copy the supervisor's ID number from the employee sheet and we paste their ID number in here. And then they chose not to have the contact information, and we have the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The shift setup, they have different shifts, so they wanted to put in the different types of shifts that they have. So they have a 7 a.m. to 3:30, a 6 a.m. to 2:30. They wanted to know what times those people actually worked. So they put in their own shifts, which, as I mentioned before, is completely up to you guys if you want to do that, or you can use something similar to what we defaulted in the system. Next is the employees. So we have an employee ID number, a first name. Middle initials are nice, just because you can have several John Smiths, and unfortunately we don't have junior or senior in the system, but it's always nice to have a middle initial, so we can tell John A. Smith from John W. Smith. Next is the active, and then you can see these are all shop persons. Sorry, I've got some fields here that are not required, that are hidden. Next we have the shop that they're assigned to, the shift that they're associated with, and in this case they provided us with an email address. There are local titles. So you might have a secretary, a purchaser, a mechanic, locksmith, and then their budget titles. You see plant utility engineer 1, general mechanic, secretary 1, maintenance supervisor 1. Those are the budget titles. Okay. HR can assist you at getting the job titles and budget titles if needed. Just reach out to your local HR. Okay. Any questions on filling out the templates?
I have a question, Dan. This is June again. As I mentioned, FIT uses an external vendor, so we would probably have to rely on them for the employee data. Do you have any experience working with that, and you know, what the process would be in terms of getting them into the database?
No, but that's a really good question. I'll have to find that one out.
Right, because I don't know if they would be in the FIT HR database. So why don't I talk offline with you about that?
Yeah, I'll make note. I'll have to reach out to AssetWorks on it and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Well, we moved pretty quickly through this, a lot faster than I thought I would. This is the easiest one of the imports. So if you've submitted to me the proposed shops spreadsheet, the spreadsheet here, if you've sent that to me, you're able to go into your OneDrive and you should see a copy of the instructions for adding shops, the spreadsheet you sent me, and then finally your shops and employees spreadsheet for you to fill out. If by chance you log into your OneDrive and you don't see these 3 items in there, means I'm missing some information from you, and we can't move forward until I get that information. Feel free to reach out by the end of this week after I'm done with all 3 sessions. If I don't have 3 files for everybody, I'll be reaching out myself. If you don't have OneDrive access already, please reach out to me with whoever needs OneDrive access. I've been sending that out to everybody throughout the week, last week and this week. Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, I won't take up any of your time. I'll give you an hour back here for whatever work you may have. And